The bell above the glass door chimed softly as she stepped inside, clutching a worn canvas bag close to her chest as if it held something fragile, something more than just papers and coins. Heads turned, just for a moment, then turned back again. People always noticed her, but never for long. She had mastered the art of being seen and dismissed in the same breath. Her name was Eliza Harper, though most people didn't bother to ask. To them, she was just another tired face, another quiet figure moving through a world that rarely slowed down enough to care. The bank was polished and bright, filled with marble floors and quiet whispers. It was the kind of place where people spoke in lowered voices, as if money demanded reverence. Eliza hesitated near the entrance, her shoes leaving faint marks of dust behind her. She glanced down, self-conscious, then took a deep breath and approached the counter. "I'd like to check my balance," she said softly. The teller barely looked up. "Account number?" Eliza fumbled gently with a small, creased piece of paper, handing it over with careful hands. The teller typed it in, her expression neutral, then paused for just a fraction of a second, so brief that most would have missed it. She looked at Eliza again, this time with a flicker of curiosity. "Please wait a moment," the teller said, standing up. Eliza nodded, stepping aside. She didn't question it. People often made her wait. A few minutes later, a man in a sharp suit approached. His nameplate read, "Branch Manager." His steps were quick, purposeful, and slightly irritated. "Ma'am," he began, his tone already edged with impatience, "this area is for customers conducting business. If you're here for—" "I am a customer," Eliza said gently. Not defensive, just stating a fact. He looked at her more carefully now. Her faded dress, the frayed edges of her sleeves, the quiet dignity in her posture. To him, it didn't add up. "We've had some issues lately," he continued, lowering his voice, "with people coming in without accounts. If you don't have—" "I do," she said again, holding his gaze this time. There was a brief silence. The teller returned, whispering something into the manager's ear. Whatever she said made his expression change, not dramatically, but enough. His brows furrowed slightly, confusion replacing annoyance. "Are you sure?" he whispered back. The teller nodded. The manager cleared his throat, straightening his jacket. "Ma'am, could you come with me, please?" Eliza hesitated for a moment, then followed him into his office. It was a stark contrast to her world. Sleek furniture, a wide desk, sunlight pouring through tall windows. He gestured for her to sit. "I apologize," he said, his tone now more measured. "There seems to be some discrepancy." Eliza smiled faintly. "There usually is." He turned his computer screen toward her. "This account is yours?" She leaned forward, adjusting her glasses slightly. "Yes." He stared at her, then back at the screen. "The balance here is—" He paused, almost as if saying it aloud might make it less real. "It's over $3 million. The room fell silent. Eliza didn't react the way he expected. No surprise, no excitement, just a quiet nod, as if he had confirmed something she already knew. "Yes," she said, "that sounds right." The manager leaned back in his chair, completely disarmed now. I don't understand." Most people didn't. Eliza folded her hands in her lap, her fingers lightly intertwined. "It started many years ago," she said, with a small promise. She looked past him, as if the walls of the office had dissolved, revealing something far away. "I used to be a teacher," she began. "Second grade, nothing fancy, just a small classroom, chipped desks, and children who needed someone to believe in them." Her voice softened as she spoke. "There was a boy in my class, Marcus. He came to school hungry more often than not. His clothes were worn, and he rarely spoke. But he had the brightest eyes, curious, full of questions he was too afraid to ask." The manager listened, unsure where this was going, but unable to interrupt. "One day, I noticed he hadn't brought lunch again," she continued. "So I shared mine. The next day, I packed a little extra, then a little more. It became our routine." She smiled faintly at the memory. "Over time, I started noticing others, children who stayed quiet, not because they were shy, but because they felt invisible. So I began using my own money to help. Food, books, shoes, nothing extravagant, just enough to make them feel seen." The manager leaned forward, slightly. "But teachers don't earn much," he said carefully. Eliza chuckled softly. "No, we don't. But kindness isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in choices. She paused, then continued. Years passed. Those children grew up. Some I lost touch with, others came back. Marcus was the first. He walked into my classroom one afternoon, years later, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary. I barely recognized him, but he recognized me. The manager felt something shift inside him. He told me he'd never forgotten those lunches, said they kept him going when everything else felt impossible. He went on to start a company, technology, I think, very successful. She glanced at the screen again. He insisted on helping me. I refused at first. I told him there were others who needed it more, so he made a different offer. What kind of offer? The manager asked quietly. He asked me to let him create a fund, she said, in my name, for children like him. I agreed, but only on one condition. That you would manage it. He guessed. She shook her head. That I would never stop being part of it. Not just financially, but personally. Visiting schools, meeting children, listening. The manager swallowed. And this account? It grew, she said simply. Marcus wasn't the only one. Others came back too. Former students, parents, even strangers who heard the stories. They contributed, invested, expanded it. She looked down at her hands. But I never changed how I lived. The manager blinked. Why not? Eliza met his eyes, her expression calm and unwavering. Because I never wanted to forget what it felt like to need kindness, she said. Comfort has a way of making us forget. The words hung in the air. I come here every month, she continued, not to admire the number, but to remind myself of the responsibility it carries. The manager looked at her differently now, not as someone out of place, but as someone who had quietly reshaped countless lives. I'm sorry, he said, the words feeling inadequate even as he spoke them. For earlier, Eliza smiled gently, you were doing your job. No, he said, shaking his head. I was making assumptions. She didn't argue. He stood up slowly. Would you allow me to help in any way? Eliza considered the question. There's a school across town, she said. They're struggling, underfunded, overlooked. I've been meaning to visit. The manager nodded immediately. I'll arrange it, whatever they need. She stood, picking up her worn bag. Then that's how you can help, she said. As she walked toward the door, he called out, Miss Harper? She turned. Why do you still dress like this? He asked, not out of judgment now, but genuine curiosity. Eliza glanced down at her simple clothes, then back at him. Because this, she said softly, is how the world sees the people who need help. She opened the door, pausing for just a moment, and I never want to stop seeing them. The bell chimed again as she left. The manager stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway. The number on the screen no longer seemed like the most important thing in the room. For the first time in years, he walked out of his office, past the polished counters and hurried customers, and noticed something he had overlooked every day. A tired mother counting coins, an elderly man hesitating before filling out a form, a young girl waiting quietly in the corner. He saw them, really saw them, and something inside him changed. Because sometimes, the greatest wealth isn't what sits in an account. It's the lives quietly transformed by a single act of kindness, repeated again and again, until it becomes something extraordinary.